The streets of Nazi-occupied France were dark and silent under the curfew of 1942. In the shadows, a woman walked with a distinct, uneven rhythm, the heavy clunk of a wooden prosthetic leg echoing on the cobblestones. To the Gestapo, she was a ghost, a phantom who could not be caught. They knew her only as the Limping Lady, the most dangerous of all Allied spies. Her name was Virginia Hall, and she was about to change the course of World War II. The German secret police were desperate to find her. They plastered her description on wanted posters across the country. They hunted her with dogs and patrol cars. But she was always one step ahead, outsmarting them at every turn with a brilliance that bordered on the impossible. This is the true story of the American woman who refused to let a disability define her. The woman who lost a leg only to become the most feared weapon in the Allied arsenal. She was a master of disguise, a leader of armies, and a survivor of the most dangerous spy game ever played. Virginia Hall was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1906. From a young age, she was different. She did not want the life of a quiet society wife that was expected of women in those days. She wanted adventure. She wanted to see the world. She studied hard and learned to speak French and German with perfect fluency. She dreamed of becoming a diplomat, but her path to greatness took a tragic turn during a hunting trip in Turkey in 1933. She was just 27 years old. She tripped while climbing over a fence and accidentally discharged her shotgun. The blast shattered her left foot. It was a catastrophic injury. Infection set in and doctors had no choice but to amputate her leg below the knee. Most people would have given up. Most people would have retreated to a quiet life of pity. But Virginia Hall was not most people. She named her wooden leg Cuthbert. She treated it with a dark, sarcastic humor. She refused to let it slow her down. She learned to walk on it. She learned to run on it. She even learned to parachute with it. But the US State Department did not share her resilience. When she applied to become a diplomat, they rejected her. Because of her amputation, they told her she was physically unfit to serve. It was a crushing blow, a door slammed in her face by the very country she loved. But this rejection would become Nazi Germany's greatest mistake. Because if America would not take her, Britain would. As the war clouds gathered over Europe, Virginia Hall found her way to the Special Operations Executive, or SO. A secret British organization formed by Winston Churchill to set Europe ablaze. They were looking for people with courage, people with intelligence, people who could blend in. Virginia was perfect. She underwent intense training, learning how to kill with a knife, how to use a radio, how to build explosives, how to resist interrogation. Her instructors were amazed by her determination. Despite the pain of her prosthetic leg, she outperformed many of the men. In 1941, she was ready. They gave her a fake identity, a cover as an American reporter named Bridget LeConteur, and they sent her into Vichy France. This was a suicide mission. She was alone, deep behind enemy lines, with no backup. If she was caught, she would be tortured and executed. But Virginia did not hesitate. She arrived in Lyon, a city teeming with Gestapo officers, and she went to work. She set up a safe house. She recruited Frenchmen and women to the resistance. She became the linchpin of the spy network in southern France. She organized parachute drops of weapons and supplies. She coordinated sabotage missions, destroying German supply lines and factories. She engineered the escape of dozens of downed Allied pilots and prisoners of war, getting them safely to Spain. She was a logistical genius. The Germans knew someone was orchestrating this chaos, but they could not find the source. They looked for a man. They looked for a large military network. They never suspected the quiet woman with a limp walking down the street. Virginia operated with ice in her veins. She changed her hair color constantly. She wore different clothes. She mastered the art of becoming invisible. Once a German soldier almost caught her carrying a map of sabotage targets. She looked him in the eye and pretended to be a simple French peasant. The officer bought the act and let her go. She was living on a knife edge every single second. The stress was immense. But the clunk of Cuthbert on the pavement reminded her of her strength. She was broken but unbreakable. By 1942, the Gestapo was closing in. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, was brought in specifically to hunt down the English spy. He was ruthless. He tortured and killed thousands. He knew the spy network was centered in Lyon, and he was tightening the noose. Virginia realized her time was up. If she stayed, she would be captured and her network would be destroyed. She had to escape, but the border was heavily guarded. The only way out was over the Pyrenees mountains. In the middle of winter, this was a desperate journey for a fit man. For a woman with a wooden leg, it seemed impossible. But Virginia had no choice. She put on her heavy coat. She packed a small bag. And she set out into the freezing snow. She hired a guide to lead her through the mountains. For days they climbed higher and higher. The wind howled like a dying animal. The snow reached her waist. The cold was agonizing. Her prosthetic leg was freezing against her skin. The ice made it slippery and she fell repeatedly. Each fall was a battle to get back up. Her body was exhausted. Her stump was raw and bleeding. But she refused to stop. She crawled on her hands and knees when the slope was too steep. She slept in freezing caves, shivering uncontrollably. She was starving. At one point she stopped and sent a coded message back to London. It was a moment of dark humor amidst the despair. She told them that Cuthbert was giving her trouble. The people in London were confused. They thought Cuthbert was a code name for one of her guides. They replied asking if she wanted a doctor for him. Virginia famously sent back a message. "No, Cuthbert is annoying me. Do you want me to amputate?" It was a display of her iron will. Even when facing death on a frozen mountain, she was making jokes about her own disability. After 12 days of hellish trekking, she finally crossed the border into Spain. She collapsed in a Spanish border town. Barely alive, but she had made it. She had escaped the butcher of Lyon. She was a legend in the making, but her war was not over. Virginia Hall returned to London a hero, but she was bored by office work. She wanted to go back. The Americans had now entered the war and formed the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, the precursor to the CIA. Virginia joined them immediately. She demanded to be sent back to France. The OSS commanders were hesitant. They knew the Gestapo was looking for her. But she insisted. She could not sit on the sidelines while her friends in France were fighting and dying. In 1944, she went back. This time she had an even more dangerous mission. She was to organize the resistance in central France to support the D-Day invasion. She could not use her old cover. Everyone knew her face. So she underwent a radical transformation. She disguised herself as an old French peasant woman. She dyed her gray hair. She wore drab clothes. She hunched over to hide her height. She used a heavy load of laundry as a prop. She looked like a harmless grandmother. But beneath her basket of dirty laundry, she carried a radio. And the orders to destroy the German war machine. She parachuted into France one night, landing in a field near the village of Cosny. She was back. The Limping Lady had returned. And this time she was not just organizing sabotage. She was commanding an army. She coordinated the actions of over 1,500 resistance fighters. She trained them. She armed them. She directed them to attack German supply convoys. She had them blow up train tracks, cut communication lines, ambush German patrols. Under her leadership, the resistance in central France became a lethal force. They destroyed bridges and railways vital to the German retreat. They tied down thousands of German soldiers who were desperately needed on the front lines. The Germans were in panic. They could not move their tanks. They could not get their ammunition. They were being bled dry by an invisible enemy. Virginia would often sit in a small room transmitting messages to London for hours at a time, while German trucks rumbled past outside. She was the calm eye of the storm. When the Allied liberation forces finally arrived, they were amazed. The German army in that region was in disarray. The railways were destroyed. The bridges were gone. The surrender of thousands of German troops was largely due to the work of Virginia Hall and her Maquisards. The American generals who met her could not believe their eyes. They expected a hardened soldier. They found a woman with a limp who smiled softly and spoke with great modesty. General Bill Casey later said she had the courage of a lion. Virginia Hall did not seek glory. She did not ask for medals. She simply did her job and then packed her bags. But her contributions could not be ignored. She was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the only American civilian woman to receive it in World War II. The British also awarded her the Member of the British Empire. But the true reward for her was the liberation of France, the freedom of the people she had grown to love. After the war, Virginia Hall continued her service. She joined the CIA when it was formed. She became one of the first female operations officers. She worked on intelligence during the Cold War. She never stopped serving her country. She proved that women could be just as effective as men in the field of espionage. She shattered every stereotype. She overcame every obstacle. She lost a leg, but gained a legacy that will never fade. The Gestapo never caught her. The Nazis never broke her. She died in 1982 at the age of 76. But her story lives on, in the archives of the CIA, in the history books of France, and in the hearts of anyone who hears her name. Virginia Hall was not just a spy. She was a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of the human spirit. She showed the world that a limp does not define how you walk. It defines how you rise. And she rose higher than anyone could have imagined. The Limping Lady, the warrior of the shadows, the American heroine who saved the world.